All right, Danielle. Well, this is week 7 of the W Hoops podcast, and it was a busy week for the Indiana Fever. 3 games in, I want to say, 4 days. I mean, they had to
Hmm.
travel to Seattle, travel back to Indy, then a back-to-back with Dallas. And the
Traveling
week,
to Dallas.
yes, exactly. And then the week got off to a good start, a big win at Seattle, but a win that ended with a loss.
Yeah, Caitlin has been out then since then with a quad injury, I believe. And we'll see. Or wait, is it a quad injury
I
this
think
one
it's a
or no?
groin. I think it was
Right,
a
that's
quad
right.
injury earlier, and now it's a
Yeah,
groin injury.
yeah. So not great, but still good to get a win against Seattle. Seattle has been one of the better teams in the league this year. Certainly on paper, but also just watching them, they look really good and they're tough. They've had some inconsistencies, but yeah, a win against Seattle at Seattle is a very good win.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to see the end of the game. I saw most of that game, and I thought, yeah, unfortunately, Caitlin's shooting was still off. I think she was over the game from
Yeah.
three-point range, but and I didn't feel like, Indiana was pushing it again as much. The pace wasn't there, but Seattle's got a really good defensive team,
Hmm.
and Gabby's a top 5 defender in the league.
Hmm.
Nneka's a great interior defender. Even she's
Hmm.
really a little
Izzy,
undersized.
Skylar.
Yeah, and Diggins is a good guard defender. I mean, she's
Yeah.
pesky. I mean, she gets a lot of steals. She has
Yeah.
just good hands, and so to get the I don't remember what the final score ended up being, but
But yeah, and then even like they were just
it
getting
was a
whatever they wanted. There were
nine
cuts and
94 points against a really good defensive team.
yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, and they were getting all sorts of stuff just on pick and rolls and in the paint. Boston had a killer game. And then Kelsey Mitchell is back. The Indiana commentator talks about how she usually gets off to kind of a slow start every season. And slow, still relatively quite good. Like I think she has been averaging 17 points a game, but just not looking quite as good as you expect her to. But she is back, it seems for sure. She looked really good all week. And yeah, just is in a good group now.
yeah, she had a great week and needed her to step up with Caitlin getting hurt again. And I don't know. We talked some last week about it looking like Caitlin was sick, maybe just
Hmm.
under the weather a little from, uh, or maybe it was just the leg was bothering her. Maybe it's a combination
Yeah.
of, with the leg injury, maybe she's not able to, be working out, and maybe she's just her fitness is down a little bit, and so maybe. But we also thought there were some sniffles and some other things going on. Um, so who knows? It seems like it's a little bit of a snake bit season for Caitlin so far after having years and years of looking indestructible and
Yeah.
just unbelievably great, playing every game, playing a lot of minutes at Iowa every game, and last year. So she just a little bit of some struggles. So hopefully, these days off will help, um, and she can get back to full health in time for the Commissioner's Cup game. We'll talk more about that a little bit later in the podcast. But yeah, I think we definitely missed her in the second game of the week.
Yeah, for sure. Against LA, they played pretty well a lot of the game, but just kind of collapsed in the fourth. And uh, that's you miss Caitlin a lot. Even if she's having a terrible shooting night like she did against Seattle, she still just impacts the defense a lot. Everyone else has more space around her. So it helps a lot to have her on the floor. And Aaliyah Boston had some good games this week, but it's life is a lot easier for her when Caitlin's on the floor.
Yeah. And there were 2 things I think coming out of that game. One was I think it was the end of the third quarter when uh, Indiana went with a super small lineup. I don't think any of the bigs were in. Howard was out, Boston was out, Turner was out, Timpson was out, and LA still had both of their bigs in. They had Hambry in, and it's just they made a run to get. I don't remember if they. I don't think they tied it, but they they just got a little momentum going, I think, and they
Yeah,
hit a
they cut the
shot
lead
right at the end
down
of the
and
quarter.
then yeah, the at the very end of the third quarter, I think Aari took a shot a little early and they got a shot in on the other end and yeah, just started
Yeah,
falling apart a little bit and weren't getting some rebounds. They gave in the fourth quarter gave up some I think they gave up a 5 point possession just because they couldn't rebound off a free throw or something like that.
yeah. So that was one thing. And then I thought at the end of the game, well, first of all, they gave up 35 points in the fourth quarter. And
Yeah.
you just can't do that. Some of that may have been fouls at the end. I don't know. It kind of ballooned. I think it was a tie game or one possession game with 2 minutes to go or so, but ended up losing by what, 10, 85 to 75. But they gave up 35 points in the fourth quarter. And there's a bit of a trend. I think I mentioned to you earlier, their last three losses, they've led at the end of the third quarter and
Yeah.
then lost the game. And it was the Golden State game last week and the game against the Aces last week also. So that's a bit of a troubling trend. But I think also at the end of that game, just I thought Kelsey Plum kind of was leading the team for LA. It's like she was the go-to person. She was making things happen, and I think Indiana missed having Caitlin at that time, having a go-to person who's really can create for herself, but also create for teammates. And Plum was doing that at the tail end of the game, and I thought that really impacted Indiana.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but related again just to the blowing of leads was the third game of the season or the week this week against Dallas. Fun game, a lot of build up to it. They moved the game to American Airlines Arena in Dallas instead of College Park Center in Arlington, where the games are usually held about 7,000 capacity,
Mhm.
something like that. So 20,000. I think it's the biggest WNBA game ever in Dallas.
Yeah, they said it
And
was the highest attended women's game in Texas ever.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So that was great. Cooper Flag was there.
yeah.
Um, number one pick for the Mavericks, watching the number one pick for the Wings and Paige Beckers. Kyrie Irving was there, who you said, I don't think I'd remember that before, that he's Paige's favorite player. So it was a
Mhm.
big game. Fans turned out, and the Fever got off to a great start.
Yeah, they came out and scored, I don't know, what did it end up being? High 30s probably in the first quarter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just
I think, let
I
me
think they were
pull that
13
up.
for 15
It's
from the
33 to
floor.
30, it's 33 to 13 at the end of the
Okay.
first quarter.
Yeah, 33. Okay. But yeah, I think they only missed two shots in the first quarter or something ridiculous like that. They were just firing on all cylinders and Dallas couldn't buy a bucket early.
Yeah, Page was inefficient. He was just missing some shots
Yeah. And the rest of
in
the
the
team
first
was as
quarter.
well.
And Indiana looked amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, they were incredible in that. But then again, just kind of over the next two quarters, slowly gave up the lead. Page hit a big three at the halftime buzzer,
Hmm.
and that seemed to get Dallas going and Page going as well. She ended up having a great game with 27 points.
Yeah.
Um, and the game ended up being a lot closer than it needed to be. It seemed like
Mhm.
Indiana seemed to be in control. Dallas had the worst record, I think, coming into that game, at least, and I know for sure the worst 2-year record coming into that game. And yeah, just it's a bit troubling how they're building up leads and losing them.
Yeah, it was encouraging though to see Howard was really a big part of what I think Dallas either they definitely tied the game in the fourth quarter. I don't remember if they briefly took the lead. I think they might have, and then maybe Mitchell hit a shot right after that. But Howard was a big part of getting them pushing the lead back out and giving them a bit of a comfortable margin. She got a couple of key rebounds, made a couple important shots, and so it was good to see that from someone other than Caitlin or Aaliyah or Kelsey to get some help in clutch minutes from someone outside of the big three.
Yeah, she played great in that
Yeah.
few minute stretch in the fourth quarter, played with a lot of energy, just made things happen. And another thing you and I talked about and was really encouraging was just to see Timpson getting minutes.
Yeah. I think she played 14 minutes and she just has so much potential. She isn't necessarily impacting the game in huge ways, but she's trying to block shots, and she is just quick and athletic. And I think the announcer said she has a 6'10" wing frame or yeah, wingspan. So yeah, I like seeing minutes for her for sure.
Yeah, that was really encouraging. It was a tough week, so to come out of it with two wins
Yeah.
was really good.
Well, and I
And
like, well, we kind of have buried the lead by not talking about Bonner yet at all. But they have Aari now. They were able, because Bonner is off the roster, they have Aari. And then she came off the bench in LA. The first game, Caitlin was out, but in the game against Dallas, she started. And I think that's the way to go for sure when Caitlin's out. She just brings a lot of energy and athleticism and can create stuff for herself and for other people, just at a higher level than Sydney Colson can.
yeah, I agree. It's great that they were able to pick her up. But we were hoping that was since she hadn't signed with somebody that that was the case that she was
Yeah.
kind of waiting and maybe they had a handshake agreement to wait until they had space on the roster to sign her. So yeah, so overall good week, but a bit of a sad note that Bonner left, maybe a little bit controversial in how she handled it. We don't know what
Yeah.
all was going on with the personal reasons for missing so many games, but I think probably a lot of Indiana Fever fans were disappointed. Not that Bonner left per se, but just how the whole situation kind of played out.
Yeah, it's very, a little bit mysterious and yeah, it's hard to say, but it does kind of sound like she didn't feel like it was a great fit pretty early on and then didn't want to play through it. It was just preferred to not be with the team, as they presumably, I think they were looking for trade options and couldn't find any takers, so ended up just waiving her because she was on an unprotected contract. But that ate a lot of their cap space up. So that's frustrating also just from like a team perspective of they were hoping to have another veteran on the team and really didn't get much from her at all. She struggled quite a bit, and I think she ended up playing 8 or 9 games with them and then was out for personal reasons for 5 or 6. But yeah, they've waived her, and um, it in the end, it might end up being the best thing for Indiana, but it doesn't feel great the way it came about. But now
Yeah.
they were able to sign up Aerie a little bit sooner than they would have been able to otherwise, which is important this season with Caitlin dealing with some lingering injuries, it feels like. And then potentially they'll have room to sign another player as well.
And hopefully, with Ari on the team now, they'll feel better about managing Caitlin's minutes, and
Yeah,
not
for
playing
sure.
her 37 to 38 minutes. You've got
Right.
somebody who can come in and run the team, be an offensive spark plug.
Yeah.
And so I
And
think
Sydney
that,
Colson is a vet who doesn't mind riding the bench. Like that was her role at Vegas. She was a good teammate and, would play when they called her number, but she didn't play a lot of minutes. So I don't think that's going to be something she's upset about.
yeah, I mean, she can be the second guard off the bench, give 5 to 7 minutes a game, maybe
Hmm.
sometimes 10 to 12 minutes a game, depending. But yeah, you don't want
Hmm.
her to be your primary backup point guard.
Right.
She's just not at the stage of her career where she can handle that load, I don't think. But yeah, she seems, to be a good teammate. And so signing Airi helps. I think they need another big still.
Hmm.
And, I don't know. One thing we talked about earlier this week was maybe we missed it when we said Indiana won the offseason. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I do think the biggest thing for them was re-signing Kelsey Mitchell, and they did that. She was an unrestricted free agent. She could have gone anywhere. So the fact that they got her back is still a pretty big win for a team that, um, even with all the additions, those three, Boston, Kelsey, Kelsey Mitchell, and Caitlin Clark are still your best three players. So re-signing Kelsey for sure was big. I like the Timpson pickup with a low second round draft pick. Um, and then Howard and Cunningham and Colson are all solid kind of role players, but I think we were hoping for quite a bit more from Bonner.
yeah. So the Duana Bonner era of the Indiana Fever's over. It was a very
Yeah,
short stint. We'll
very
see where
short.
she ends up. The
Yeah,
speculation is
she,
Phoenix, I
yeah,
think.
apparently she wants to go to either Phoenix or Atlanta, but neither of them really have the cap space or the player space. I think they would both have to waive someone or trade, make some kind of trade to make that happen. And really, I don't know that either of them need her that much. It doesn't seem like the most logical fit, especially for two teams that are kind of already exceeding early expectations and doing quite well. Atlanta just beat New York today, although New York is
Nice.
still without Jonquel and Phoebish, but um, yeah, both of those, and I think Phoenix is currently number two in the standings, right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
So
You know, I think New York's still the best team in the league when they're fully healthy, but you know, obviously losing Phoebish to Eurobasket and John Quell to a pretty extended injury now with their ankle,
mhm.
that's going to hurt them. But if they can get
Yeah,
fully healthy come playoff
right.
time, I think they're still the best team. But yeah,
Yeah.
Phoenix has been surprisingly good.
Hmm.
I sent you an article today from ESPN about their three-point shooting, where they set a WNBA record for most three-pointers made in back-to-back games, two
Hmm.
combined games. So yeah, just a lot of surprise with them. They're doing really well.
Yeah, and so do you want, if you're Phoenix, do you want to mess with a good thing and add kind of a high profile player, but who's, in the latter stage of her career and not as productive or effective as she used to be?
Yeah,
It's a tough one.
it is. It'll be
Um,
interesting to see what happens. So we'll follow up, you know, as the time goes on to see what happens with Bonner. Another
yeah.
thing I wanted to talk with you about today was the end of that Minnesota game.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
was that Friday night? What
Hmm.
the Lynx game? After the Wings, we went back and watched the tail end of the Minnesota game, and just two really bad calls that could have cost
Yeah.
Minnesota the game, but thankfully they had their challenge left and they
Hmm.
successfully challenged the first one. And so they got to keep their challenge and they successfully challenged the second one. And
Yeah.
on the one hand, it's like we were really happy to see that the officials were willing to overturn their calls.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, it's like WNBA officiating.
Yeah.
Those were two really bad calls.
Yeah. Yeah. Like no contact at all. It's good defense and yeah, it's good. Cheryl Reeve kept her challenges and used them well, but it is annoying and it feels like you should have more than two correct challenges if you're correct. You don't want the whole game just to become challenges, but it feels like maybe you should get one to use in the first half or and then two if you're correct in the second. I don't know, but it's just frustrating, but I'm glad to see Minnesota won that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And which was the highlight? Oh, the John Boy video when
Yeah.
I sent you when Caitlin got called. That was the game against
Yeah.
the Sun where
Hmm.
Caitlin didn't even touch.
Oh yeah, no contact. Tina
Was
Charles.
it Tina Charles?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And, I mean, John Boy was hilarious with that. But, you know, Caitlin was saying, you know, you're going to watch the video later. And then she was
yeah.
like, oh, watch it now because they're replaying it on the big
Right.
screen at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And you could so clearly see that there was no contact and the foul
Yeah.
was called, you know. And I often told you, you know, through the years, you just have to be careful as a defender. Anytime you swipe at the ball, referees just have a tendency. You know, I don't know if her arm came that forward, if she's trying to block the shot, but she didn't touch Charles
Right.
at all. And they called
Yeah.
the foul. And sometimes refs just call what they think they see and not what they actually happened. So yeah, the something has to be done. You know, like I wish Indiana could challenge that call against Clark that time, but thankfully for Minnesota, you know, the referees overturned their two very bad calls, and Minnesota was able to hang on and pull out the victory.
Hmm.
And so they're sitting pretty in first place, um, and you know they leading the league in wins, leading the league in point differential. But you pointed out that they've had a weaker schedule in the first half of the season.
Yeah, they play New York four times in the second, like in a couple of weeks. It's crazy. They play them three times in a row for no apparent reason in July, I think. So they have a tough schedule. They play Indiana three times, New York four times, I think Vegas twice, Seattle at least twice down the stretch. So That'll be a tough stretch, but really for New York and Minnesota, I feel like once they get to the playoffs, I mean, you want the number one seed for sure, but both of those teams are going to be tough. Um, I do wonder with Jonquel missing this extended time if Minnesota can kind of lock up the number one overall seed for the playoffs because that'll be important if they can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's one thing also wanted to touch on just real quickly. Speaking of that, is the current standings, with Minnesota in first, and as you mentioned, Phoenix is second in the standings right now.
Hmm.
But um, the Valkyries are in. If the playoffs started today, the Valkyries would be in and the Aces would be out. And that was just
Right.
kind of shocking to
Just
me
as
when
we
I
all
saw that.
predicted.
Yeah, nobody had that on their bingo card.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, just kind of a strange start to the season. But the Valkyries have a net positive point differential now. I mean, they're just one game over 500. So,
Yeah.
and the Aces, I think, are just one game under 500. So
Hmm.
there's plenty of time to make up one game, and you know,
Right.
things are going to look different if Indiana gets a healthy Caitlin Clark back.
Hmm.
I think they got maybe they're in seventh place, the Fever are right now, but they've got maybe the fourth or fifth best point differential, and that's with Caitlin missing a lot of games even.
Hmm.
And
And just
so,
a lot of inconsistency with Bonner there and not there, and hopefully they'll be able to get into a good groove now. And I hope they get Emma Meesum in, but we'll see if she comes over after Eurobasket. But that would be the dream pickup. If they get Emma Meesum in, forget about it. They'll be like a legit title contender, better than with Duana Bonner.
oh, for sure, Meeseman's the dream, like you said, but
Yeah.
they've got to get a big, I think,
Yeah.
that they can play more. So yeah, so that'll be interesting. Expect the Aces to move up. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Are the Valkyries going to hang around? I mean, the Mystics would be in the playoffs today if it ended. Didn't have
Yeah.
that on my bingo card either. Who would have
Right.
called that? I would assume it's going to be the Aces knocking out the Mystics. I think the Valkyries look like a better team than the Mystics. I mean, I could be wrong.
Possibly.
The Mystics have been surprisingly good. Also, they got
Hmm.
a good rookie class, and
Yeah, I would
Sykes
guess
has been
though
scoring.
between the Valkyries and the Mystics that probably the Valkyries have just more veteran players on their team. Washington relies a lot on rookies or rookie contract players. So um, yeah, if it comes down to between the two, you'd expect the Valkyries to have um, a little bit better chances and probably a coaching edge as well, it seems.
Yeah, I think so as well. So that's kind of it for the news and notes. So on to our what were they thinking segment. It's going to be a Dallas-centered
Hmm.
theme this week for what were they thinking. So what did you have for what were they thinking
Yeah,
this week?
well, so yesterday, Dallas played a back-to-back. They had just played Indiana on Friday. They have a game on Saturday against Washington, and Washington is pretty heavily favored to win that game, but Dallas ends up coming out and kind of blowing them out of the water in the first quarter and holding on to the lead to win the game. With Paige out, for they claimed a knee. I read somewhere that maybe it was more load management than an actual knee issue. So hopefully that's the case. But um, they got contributions from everyone, including Haley Jones, who's on a hardship contract. She was 4 for 7 from the field in 21 minutes, had 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 0 turnovers, and was a plus 23 for her plus minus 8 points. And then they cut her today, less than 12 hours after a really significant contribution to important win for them.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I mean,
No.
I think Haley Jones should be a player who could stick in the league. She's a
Yeah.
smart player, a good
Hmm.
ball handler for her size.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not a super athlete. She doesn't have elite athleticism, but just a heady player who could
Hmm.
really help a team and seems like a great teammate as well and is a winner. She played at a great program.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I hope she can find a place to
I
stick
hope
in the
so.
league.
Yeah.
Um, so my what were they thinking is also Dallas related. It's with Paige and just the minutes. I mean, they claimed at the beginning of the season that they were going to manage her minutes, but what have they been thinking? They've been playing her at 36, 37 minutes every night
Yeah.
and hopefully this is just a load management, the issue, not playing her on the back to back and letting her rest. So maybe they're, the GM overruled the coach or something and they just called it a knee injury. But then when the news first came out, they said it was a knee issue. And I thought,
Mhm.
what were they thinking? It just, I don't understand what these teams are doing. It feels like you get coaches who, the teams say all the right things at the beginning of the season with these rookies coming in off of long college seasons where they've played a
Hmm.
lot of games and don't get much of a break. And you saw it with Caitlin last year. She's just such a different player after the Olympic break,
Yeah.
after she got a little rest. And, Paige has been struggling to be as efficient as she normally is, although
Mhm.
she's scoring a lot, but and doing well, but not quite as efficiently as she did at Connecticut. And maybe that part of that's jump up in level of competition. She's not in the Big East anymore. But boy, I when I first heard about her knee, I was just like, oh no, don't do this to her, please. Manage
Hmm.
her minutes, let her rest. Like you said, Paige is not indestructible; she's destructible.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great quote by you, and she's had injury issues in her career,
Yeah.
and they should be really load managing her this year, tanking for one of the top two spots in the draft next year,
Exactly.
and
And
start building.
they're at a different point in kind of their rebuild than like Indiana, for example. Last year they played Caitlin too much, I think, but they were they had just gotten Caitlin was their second number one pick in a row, and they were trying to make the playoffs. So you get playing Caitlin. They should have rested Caitlin more, but they're in a different position than Dallas is now. Dallas probably only has two or three players that you would want to keep on a championship team, um, and just need to tank this year and get another good pick or two, um, before they can really compete. So there's nothing to be gained by playing Paige a lot this year.
Yeah, there really isn't, except Rookie of the Year award for Paige. That's the only
Right.
thing that can be gained. So
And she doesn't care about that.
no, she doesn't. So all right, so this upcoming week, you got the first place Minnesota Lynx, which makes a lot of sense in the Commissioner's Cup, against the seventh place Indiana Fever with
Yeah.
an injured Caitlin Clark potentially on Tuesday. So what are you thinking for that game?
It'll be interesting. This will be their first time to match up, and it doesn't count towards the standings, or like, yeah, the overall standings and stats or anything, but it'll be interesting to see how they match up with them. It's a little bit easier than some teams potentially because they don't have like the size of an Atlanta or a New York that has some really tall bigs. So it'll be interesting. But I think Indiana will be able to go small a little bit more effectively against Minnesota than against some of these other teams. But really, it'll come down to if Caitlin is able to play or not. If she does, I think they have a good chance. If not, I would expect Minnesota to win pretty comfortably.
Yeah, that makes sense. Minnesota's such a good team,
Hmm.
and they play so well together. And Nafisa is the best player in the league right now. So hopefully her back, is back to 100%. She
Yeah.
was able to play and looked good in the
Yeah.
minutes we saw at
I
the end
saw
of the game.
something to the effect that if it had been the playoffs, she wouldn't have missed any time, but they're just being cautious because yeah, they want her to be fully healthy.
Yeah, we saw the game where she got hurt. Mom and I did, and it was didn't look like anything major. I mean, there was
Yeah.
no major twist of her body or a fall or anything. She just kind of suddenly grabbed at her back. So it just seemed like just a minor tweak at the
Yeah.
time. So I'm glad they're being cautious with her.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
she's still shooting 50, 40, 90. I think she pretty much has MVP locked up.
yeah, MV fee, right? Is
Right.
that she deserves it this year. And
She
so
does.
that should be a fun game Tuesday. And then the
Yeah.
other big news of the week is we're traveling back to Indiana and we are going to be at the Fever game on Saturday.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Hopefully Caitlin is back. I think they have a game on Thursday maybe before, but we'll see. Hopefully she's back. And yeah, should be fun to see. Gainbridge, I think, has been pretty much sold out for all the games. So yeah, should be a fun one. Oh,
Yeah,
and
you're
the
right.
Indianapolis, we'll be flying through Indianapolis, and they have a full-size court in the airport for the All-Star game coming up, so that's fun. That'll be
Yeah,
fun
we'll
to
have to get
see.
a picture of that and get that posted on our X page.
Yep.
But yeah, so you're right. They do have a game. They're playing the Aces Thursday. We
Okay.
got Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Again, three games this week. It's kind of unfortunate they made the Commissioner's Cup because they could
Yeah.
really use the break. I think this is
Yeah,
going
I
to be
think so.
three straight weeks with three games.
Yep.
So, and it's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. It's not like it's Monday, Wednesday, Sunday or something. It's
Hmm. But I think
just,
they're at Minnesota, which probably isn't too long of a trip for them, and then at home, I think, for both Thursday and Saturday. So could be worse,
yeah, and this will
like it
be our,
was this week.
yeah, but this will be our first time back to Gainbridge since we were there in 2016 for
Yeah, for the
UConn's
national championship
national
game.
championship, the
Yeah.
Stewie's fourth straight championship. So that'll be fun. We're not going to have as good a seats as we had
Hmm.
then. We're going to be up high, but I've heard a lot of people say Gainbridge is a great place to watch basketball and all
Yeah.
the seats are good. And so, yeah, looking forward to that and that'll be a lot of fun. All right, Danielle, that's it for the W Hoops podcast today. Everyone, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment or review, and we'll see you next week.